G'day friends and fans, welcome to Dave Talks Stuff. When it comes to men's rights, there are 5 questions that women avoid. Number 1, male mental health. The mental health crisis is something they don't want to have a serious conversation about. They want to feminize it. They want you to talk about your feelings. They want men to be held accountable. And the fact is that men make up the vast majority of mental health crises in most countries. I say most because a lot of countries don't measure or adequately deal with mental health. They're just simply too poor and overwhelmed. And now activists are trying to turn this around. However, men, you can measure this with whatever media metric you want to measure it with, receive less attention, less funding, and less systemic intervention compared to every other public health crisis. There are more organizations, there are more health organizations dedicated to racism than men's mental health. Now you may think that it is because the governments don't care about you. Well, guess what? That is absolutely spot on. The governments have no incentive to and have never had an incentive to care about men since the detachment of civilian government and the military. Because the civilian government sees the military as an asset to protect them. Not the state. That is an illusion. The state is an illusion. It's not protection of the state. It's protection of the politician. And the politician, for their survival, pander to the women. And because mental health is majority dominated by women or feminized men, by left-wing ideology, which is predominantly dominated by feminism or female empowerment, mental health will remain a crisis. But there's a second reason. Mental health is something that is poorly understood. Now, I'm going to break these 5 questions down, each individually, and then later, in other videos, I will address each one. So, going forward, you can better yourself. See, a lot of men never receive a life education, so they don't know how to deal with mental health and legal issues. Number 2, family courts. Men have often argued there is a systemic bias and it is a significant measure of the so-called fairness doctrine that women keep claiming is a moral issue, a human issue, a human rights issue. But you're not treated as an equal. You're treated as a suspicious individual. You're treated as a visitor, not a parent, and often seen as a financial instrument for alimony and child support by a system, particularly how many governments now have agencies that collect this money for a modest fee, of course, and of course lawyers who get up to 38%, or in some cases, of the payouts in alimony or wealth distribution, let's call it what it really is. So You want to know why family courts consistently favour women? Number one reason is the biological wiring of the child to the mother. You just simply are not in a child's life enough to make that impression. Now, if you had, you are likely to get the child. But you have to sacrifice almost everything to win over a child. This child is biologically wired to its mother through birth. It's pattern recognition. It takes a long time for a child to understand the importance of the father. This is where we receive no support, no training. Guys, this is where you need training as well. But why don't we? Because the system is financially motivated not to educate men. It's resources that they could allocate to themselves or their defence. Look at what they prioritise: housing, women, defence, the state, themselves. Men don't prioritise themselves, and that is why we have a bias against men in society. 3, and this is probably the biggest problem in society today, is violence against men by women. It is a growing overload in the legal system right now, where women have been overlooked, or it's normalised for women to punch, kick, routinely mock, ignore, demean, delegitimize, and or just pretty much be a perpetrator of heinous crimes. And it is excused, such as he was a bully, and many other words, and these are often celebrated. Female killers are celebrated. Female killers are treated differently in the system than male killers. Female criminals generally receive up to 75%. You don't hear women complaining about the pay gap in crime, do you? Or the jail gap in crime, I should say. But violence is often tolerated and overlooked because simply, would show me on your mangina where you got hurt, is the often response from otherwise what appears to be serious medical professionals. And then it's systemic wide, that there is no priority for policing to go after women, because the state's priority is votes. The state is the system, and the system's priority is its own survival, its own power. You can't change it because it was changed on us long ago by conquest. Okay? The left, right, during the Industrial Revolution grew immensely powerful in a very short period of time and spread its tentacles rapidly through the male workforce, which was predominantly uneducated, because that's how they want us, right? Smart enough to pull a lever, not smart enough to know why. And there's a story going around, a side story here, very quickly, that'll help explain everything. Men in their 40s and 50s are increasingly being pushed out of the tech industry. Now, a guy recently started a tech company, we won't say who, and he, of course, hired a lot of people. What happened? The government made him hire a lot of H1s. And so now that individual with this massively successful tech company had to relocate to China to compete. It is impossible, right, to compete and fulfill obligations to men. It is because the unions have deliberately pushed wages to push jobs out for all but the few. You've been sold out long before. And we'll get to the rest at the end. So, violence by women normalised. Number 4, education. Touched on that briefly. I said, hey, men are discriminated in education. Always been discriminated against education. Unless you were part of the system, that is, a priest, a knight, to some degree monks. There weren't that many professions where you were needed or were taught to read and write. Often, you may not know this, but for centuries, people would sit in church, hear Christianity preached in Latin, and that was all you were worth. You were only worth hearing the word. And so for a long time, the majority of men were left to their own devices. And of course, as we flourished, this is when the system began to panic and realize that it had to start indoctrinating. We were only taught to read and write to be indoctrinated. And books that go against the indoctrination in one way or another are not promoted, are not given this glowing review, are not glazed like Harry Potter was glazed, and nothing has been glazed as much as Harry Potter, or still glazed by the media as much as Harry Potter. I should have told you from the beginning, if the system is promoting something, why are you supporting it? There is no incentive to fix this, because the growing gender gap in education, women don't complain when they are over 50%, they only complain when they're under 50%. And as they get to women make up 77% of funded YouTubers. Women increasingly are making up the majority of college graduates, the majority of college professors who have been now recruited are either people of color, or this is you in your own country are being discriminated against, and it's legal through what they call protected classes. This is how they bought off women. We will protect you. Now, men are falling behind in college and thus in tech jobs. And these new tech startups were training men because these advanced technologies were so complex, so complicated, they couldn't be made outside of America, so they thought they were safe until bang. And now we are losing video graphics and all these other chip manufacturing. We're losing everything again within a matter of weeks or months. The AI will start hearing about the rise of AI in India, because what happens? They train all these people, all these AIs, and what happens? Well, all these people go back to their this new tech startup in India, and get jobs and paying more than the West, with Chinese money, with Russian money, because the state has been predominantly liberal, and liberals do not care about the individual or success of the individual. They only care about the success of the state. If an individual falls, they believe that individual was unworthy. They want see, this is what people don't understand about liberalism. They love for the individual, right? Because they want to dominate. They want to dominate the individual. So the individual is uneducated, unable to succeed. You are something that the state can take care of and be a tool of the state. That's why they don't solve the inner cities, because they're all now tools of the state. If they need someone violent, they have someone to recruit for the army or whatever security forces they care. And a traumatized young man will put on that jackboot and will inflict trauma on others and enjoy it, because he is now conditioned. And if he's a person of colour, He's conditioned to hate you through the political narratives which the government allows to thrive so that the state has constant conflict to keep us divided. So why are men falling behind? Why are boys falling behind? Because those with power are pulling up the ladder. Those with wealth are pulling up the ladder. You're not getting the adequate education you need to be successful on your own. You are not paying $500,000 at Harvard for your degree. You're paying for access to institutions where presidents and powerful CEOs regularly meet. We have heard recently how Obama goes to universities and speaks. That's what you're paying for. You're paying for access to the overlords. Well, they're representatives because they don't represent you or I. The last, but probably the biggest imbalance in society today is workplace fatalities. Statistics constantly play out that men are the vast majority of workplace fatalities and women avoid these jobs like the plague. When do we have initiatives for 3% for women? Women only make up 3% of plumbers. When are we going to have 50% women plumbers? Women make up the minority of construction workers. Hey, get up there on that high rig and with a safety harness and weld that I-beam. Yeah. So all of a sudden, equality is nowhere to be found. Hey, there's a war on, suddenly. And I covered this recently. War is now apparently women's business, as Ukraine wants to build an army of 1 million, and the only way they can do that now is through recruiting women. How's their recruitment going? I haven't said, but you all know how it's going. No one wants to talk about the numbers. No one. Ukraine isn't saying how many they recruited. But we do know Ukraine's army hasn't grown. It's continuing to be worn down. And increasingly desperation. Yeah. There. So there is no incentive whatsoever throughout the entire system. Now, in context, men's rights groups do raise these issues constantly. And they try to highlight these issues constantly. But videos that don't get the likes, don't get the shares, don't get the views, there is no incentive by men because they are so frustrated. But if men's rights does not become a priority for men in the next 10 years, mgtow or the manosphere, whatever, will become a sideshow. And that is why they promote Andrew Tate and all these other sideshow, like whatever, where they just interview the thoughts, all have a good laugh at how arrogant and ignorant they are. But at the end of the day, have they changed anybody's mind? And when you do get effective, I know they attack you. So let's get effective. Let's get attacked. Let's put on our big boy boots and big boy pants and defeat the disloyal men, because we can't wait for the boomers to die off, because the boomers are passing their narcissism and all the tricks of their trade to the millennials now, and the wealth they use to oppress us with, which is our wealth. It is our pension funds or 401ks or superannuation, whatever you want to call it. It's our stolen wealth. So, do you want a universal brotherhood, or do you want the system to continue as is for the rest of your life? Now, we're not going to defeat it in our lifetime, but we're going to hurt it in our lifetime. And Gen X, and Gen Y, then Gen Z, then Gen Alpha, and then perhaps by the time the now we've seen with the collapse of the Soviet Union and others that empires are now collapsing within 75 years of their creation. We go back to ancient Egypt. It was thousands of Egypt took over 1,000 years to collapse. The point of collapse was the rise of was the end of the pharaohs. The Egyptian civilization, and when the last pharaoh power was transferred to a queen, which the Cleopatra, was the beginning of the end for Egypt. China, the last dynasty, around half that time. Again, the imperial court was ruled by the bureaucracy, all the concubines, the eunuchs, the concubines, the imperial guard, the imperial administrators. They ran the empire. The emperor had no power. The imperial guard just said, "Yeah, you try and make me, old man," because they were mostly old men, and there was no pushback. You know, there were, mostly they kept most of the rulers were kept drunk, uneducated. Do you know that, right? Imagine rulers of a country less educated than the imperial bureaucracy. We know, right? And that's what's going on in China again. Now, China is going to collapse within, it's already in the process of collapsing. China's bankrupt. And as I explained in many other videos, and some of them are not on YouTube for obvious reasons, most of my early videos are gone. But I got hacked. But you can't re-upload, particularly videos that were critical, because you just move on. I have these videos on Rumble and BitChute. So China, well, when a country goes bankrupt, what happens? Well, the system is no longer supported. It can't support itself. It breaks down. And as it breaks down, it breaks up. New systems start to take hold as people try to... the inevitable... When you're trying to fix a broken system, inevitably you make a new one, right? Because you are pushing out the people who broke it. Once the power swings back to the people, the system, that's when... Now, for now, it's like with the collapse of Egypt, to the collapse of the British Empire, the collapse of the various other empires around the world, and China was an empire, is an empire. The Tibet Empire, I forget what it's called, wasn't supported by India because it was a rival. They let China take it over because they thought China was taking care of a rival. Instead, they allowed China. They never thought China would become a bigger rival to their power. See, India lies to you when they said they've never invaded another country. They've never successfully invaded another country. But they have invaded other countries. They've attacked Tibet before. It's just in the last 250 years of the British Empire, they were kept as a jewel in the crown. They were the guardian armies of the British Empire. So they conquered other countries and oppressed them in the name of the British Empire. Now they want to do that for themselves. They are a neo-colonial power right now, so is China. What is the defining definition of neo-colonial power? Exporting people of loyalty to other countries to specifically go into government. Educated and trained to go into government and export them. And then to get those people there to bring in more Indians. And they start with schools and creating their own colonies. Canada, Australia, etc. there should be a great war against them, but there isn't because the conquest of the West. Again, the left have dominated. They dominate all the political parties, not just the left-wing ones. They dominate them all. The college-educated, the smug diplomats, the so-called moderates, they all come from the same doctrine, okay? Whether it's liberalism, communism, feminism, whatever brand they call it, right? They're just brands. And this is why men are oppressed, because we are the voices of individuality, the voices of reason. And when men of reason get together, they bring down the state. That's why states are failing. They have failed men, so men are bringing down these countries. They're bringing down India. They're bringing down China. They're bringing down Europe. They call it the shift to the right or the alt-right, whatever. No, we're bringing down corrupt systems. Thus, inevitably, men who have individuality, have morality, principles. So morality and principles, right? You just don't believe in morality. You actually have a stand. You have a limit. Unlike liberal actors who say, no, you must be an everything. You must be a pansexual. You must be everything. You must be a man of pleasure and leisure. Actually, actors used to be the most right-wing individuals there were. They're to express morality and moral lessons through art. Art used to be an individualistic thing. Collectives always drag things down. The theatre kids. And that's why they tolerate violence against men, to demasculate you, because you can't fight back. Increasingly, you're going to see TikTok videos of women saying, if you're a MAGA hat, I'm going to call it out to your face and I'm going to hit you. Well, 40 years ago, you had quite the opposite. You had Democrats saying, kill a commie for mummy, even. That's how Democrats used to be anti-communist up until... Now, I would say Truman... Some say JFK, but I say by JFK, the college-educated kids had taken over the progressives. In context, every civilization has recorded this, either through religion or politics, that the battle against evil is never-ending. But we're never taught what evil is. Evil is anything that takes away your rights as an individual. Right? Now, people often mistake the right to work as entitled to a job, or the right to pursue happiness does not mean there's a external person has the same rights to come into your country and pretty much be happy at your no. If these so-called Indians, or I say so-called because they're not all Indian, they're quite a number of races, all are acting together collectively as a country known as India, but there is no such thing as an Indian. There are 159 different states, and they're quite genetically diverse. They're not all the same. They're not one country. But you have Pakistan, you have Malaysia, you have many other countries as well who are joining this so-called Indian visa program. But I'm not here to talk about the visa program. I'm just using it as an example of how external forces are used as a tool of oppression for internal, right? To rob the so-called right of power, and increasingly the right is associated with masculinity, with individuality, and collectivism with the feminine. So you have the yin-yang of politics now. Now, say is, yes, I'm going to do these individually in other videos in the same format, and hopefully you'll arm yourself and understand why men are walking away. They're not just walking away from women, they are walking away from the state. This is what lying down is in India. This is what you see, civil disobedience, okay, in mass, right? You've seen women in India increasingly violent to men. You've seen far worse than the West. In India, you've seen violent gangs of women. Now, whether or not these men were guilty of crimes, we'll never know, because they never received a fair trial before they were lynched. And around the world, increasingly, women's groups are lynching men. And it's only on an accusation. The politics of believe all women has gotten out of control. And yeah, so I'm not advocating for anything. I'm just explaining why civilization is collapsing around us. And you ask most people, and they would say, yeah, the civilization is eroded and people don't want to fix it anymore. The left thought they won. But as they see things falling apart, I'll give you a prime example. How many successful movies have there been this year? And how many of you are interested in any movies? How many now people... Now, I am not asking you this question as a basis of morality or immorality. But you will notice there's something missing from movies that were seen in the last 20 years. Sex. Whether you have morals or not, you used to have a choice. You could watch us. But no. We have been a choice. We have the illusion of choice now. You think you have 4 brands at the supermarket. No. You have a supermarket brand and 3 brands, but increasingly they're all coming out of the same provider or processing plant, and they're labelled. Now, I don't know how many people know this, but most of your food bought and sold by the government. These brands are just that. They're just brands who own factories. It's all... Yeah, it's a hidden tax. Food is a hidden tax. And that's why for a long time, the mechanization has robbed men of their jobs and their agency. So just think about these 5 questions. Mental health, family courts, violence against men, boys failing in education, and workplace fatalities. Because these are our sword and shield to go forth and bring back life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. And we will see, because if these Indians, Malaysians, and all these other men from all these other countries, they want a better life, should have done it in your country. So you didn't like it when Europeans sought a better life in your country. That's what colonialism was. They sought a better life. They fled Europe for other countries. No. 2 wrongs don't make a right. It'll end the same way for you as it did for the Europeans. This whole idea of democracy, no. It's the republic, the protection of rights, where you have the right to say, no, you are a Mexican, or you're an Indian, or you're... And no. There is no urgency for... They keep telling us how there's all these jobs that need to be filled. yet we look around and see how many unemployed there are. Because what are they doing? They're destroying us. So, I say, do unto others. That's all I'm saying. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Please support the channel. You can support me on Ko-Fi, Patreon, buy my books, buy my merch. Appreciate each and every one of you. See you in the next video, please. And I'll see you all. Really, please. See you all in the next video, please. It's important that we deal with these 5 questions and get them out there. Bye for now.